everybody and welcome to our channel. Today I am very excited to discuss this tutorial with you, that is connecting Raspberry Pi with MacBook or any other Windows laptop or desktop using VNC. So if you want to see this tutorial or other exciting tutorial, you can visit our website anytime, that is learnavi.com. Here you will find a lot of exciting tutorials. To see this tutorial, you can go to IoT section and here you will find this tutorial. So let's get started with our tutorial. So the first thing which come to our mind is why this tutorial. So you all know that most of the time we won't be using Raspberry Pi with a separate desktop and monitor and keyboard and mouse. The most of the time we are going to use Raspberry Pi with our laptop or with our other personal computers. So most of the time while doing the interaction, we will use SHS, that is secure shell, which is like command line interface. But if we are a beginner, it is very hard to get a feel of how we are using Raspberry Pi operating system using command line. It's kind of a difficult also. So that's why we want to have some UI interface or something like that. We can get a feel that we are using, okay, I'm using Raspberry Pi desktop. So we want to get a feel of UI of Raspberry Pi desktop and the UI interface, other interfaces. For that, we are making this tutorial. So we are going using VNC, which stands for Virtual Networking Computing, which is really a very great software which help us to interact with any other desktop or operating system computer remotely. We can access it remotely on our computer. So the first thing we have to do is install VNC Viewer software. So remember, there are two things, like VNC Viewer is free of cost. And other thing is install VNC Viewer only, not VNC server. So here's a link. You can go to this link, and after going to this link, you will see something like this. And you can see that VNC is available for Windows, Linux, Raspberry Pi also. So we can interact two Raspberry Pi together using VNC. We can interact between two or more Raspberry Pi using VNC. So I'm using Mac OS and I want to interact between my MacBook and Raspberry Pi. So I'm going to download VNC Viewer for my Mac OS. So just click on download VNC Viewer. It would hardly take few seconds, I guess. Yes, it is done already. So click on this software, the downloaded file. And here they will ask that, do you want to drag it to application? Of course, I want to drag VNC Viewer to my application. And I did it. Now I will go to my Launchpad and go to my VNC Viewer application. So it will ask me like a warning that the software is downloaded from internet. Do you want to open it or not? Yes, I am sure I want to open it. So I will open it. So because I have already downloaded it few times and installed it, the thing is for me, it don't ask for agreement and all, because there are few cache files and other files which are left even after you install the things. But when you are installing for the first time, they will ask for an agreement. So just agree it and keep it at default setting. Just one click, agree, and then continue. That's it. And it will show something like screen like this. So done. Our VNC Viewer is downloaded and it is installed successfully. So the next step we have to go is setting up our hardware. So other than Raspberry Pi and our MacBook, we need three things. That is 5-volt adapter cable, which is connected to our Raspberry Pi, and one USB-C to gigabit Ethernet converter, which is connected to our MacBook here. And the third thing we need is a one Ethernet cable, whose one end is connected to our Raspberry Pi, and the other end is connected to this Ethernet converter to USB-C converter. So that's it. And after that, switch on your Raspberry Pi, and that's it. Just we have to, this is only the setup we have to do. Now let's go to the third step. Now open your network preferences. Yes, here, and click it here. Now set up your USB LAN preferences. So my USB LAN preferences here. So you can see the naming of this. Rename. Okay. So if the name is something like USB and then some ports numbers 10, 100, 1000, or maybe some other also, and then the LAN, it means there is some USB LAN which is connected to your MacBook. Here, remember the configuration, this IP version 4 should be using DHCP. There are other options also, keep it by default using DHCP. And the other thing you have to note is the location. It should be automatic. Don't do any location editing here. That's it. So our system is fixed. It is proper. We don't have to do anything. So it shows here the status is saying that this USB is connected. It means our Raspberry Pi is connected properly. But now we want to see if the data can be shared between Raspberry Pi or not. So we want to test the connection. For that, open your terminal and just type this command, which is ping raspberry pi dot local. So it is giving me that Raspberry Pi local has this IP address, and the data like 64 byte from this IP address, means from Raspberry Pi, is transferring from this computer. So it means it's saying, it want to say that data can be transferred from the Raspberry Pi to our MacBook and vice versa. So yes, so means our Raspberry Pi is connected properly to our computer. So because the data can be transferred from Raspberry Pi. So that's it. It means our connection is established properly. So now we want to connect our Raspberry Pi using VNC Viewer. So I already told you, like VNC, like virtual network computing. You will feel like you are virtually using a desktop of Raspberry Pi on your MacBook. So it will make you feel like, yes, you are using a Raspberry Pi on the computer. It's very exciting. So now just open the VNC application. The application will look like this. So for that, now I want to type in this place that it's enter a VNC server address or search. So what should be the server's address? So as when I was doing this packet transferring, there's a ping Raspberry Pi local to see if our connection is okay or not. You can see this address I was getting. This IP address is what is the how to say IP address. I don't want to go in detail, but you can think of IP address is like a normal home address, like you are living somewhere. So if someone want to know your like location, they have to see your address. So same, like it's kind of a location for Raspberry Pi. So you can copy this and you can type here. If you want to sign in, you can sign in here. I don't want to sign in, it's fine. I just put this and then I will press an enter. So it will saying something like authentication to VNC server. So here it will ask for username and password. So the username and password by default for Raspberry Pi, I will write it for you here. So while you install your software on Raspberry Pi, they have given a username and password. You can change it if you want. So the username by default for Raspberry Pi is Pi, and the password is Raspberry. So we will use the same because I didn't change my address of my username and password on Raspberry Pi. So I will use the same. So it is asking for VNC server credential. So the location of Raspberry Pi. So it is asking for Raspberry Pi. Don't think of this username and password as your laptop or desktop username and password. It is your Raspberry Pi username and password. So for username, type Pi. For password, I don't want to hide because you already know it's Raspberry. And if you want to remember password, it's okay. If you don't, it's fine. So click OK. So see, now it is saying something like this. So SSH is enabled and by default password for Pi user has not been changed because my password I didn't change. It's saying warning. So it want to say that because if someone else you don't want other to use, so you should change your password for the security. One thing to notice is like I have already given the permission. Like for the first time when you are doing, it will ask that do you want to give access to VNC Viewer to access the information from your MacBook. So you can give access if you want. If you don't want, it's okay, but there will few restriction if you don't give the access. So it is good if you give the access. I already give, so it's fine. I don't have any problem. So see, now we are in Raspberry Pi desktop and we can use our Raspberry Pi UI on our MacBook. So if you want a big screen, you can get a big screen also. You can see all the Raspberry Pi program, other things, and everything. So yes, and now we have our VNC uh, connected of Raspberry Pi and our desktop or MacBook, and we can use Raspberry Pi easily on our MacBook. So as my all the files and folders in my home of Raspberry Pi. I'm in like home of Pi user. So that's it for this tutorial. I want to shut down this. Yes, I want to shut down this. And that's it. So now we can access easily Raspberry Pi from VNC application. I hope you like this video. Thanks a lot for your kind attention, and sorry in case I speak some few wrong words repeatedly, so I'm extremely sorry for that. Thank you so much. Bye bye.